Hello, everybody. It's your host, Liam Collins.
And I'm Jordy, the host of Beers with Queers, a true crime podcast. And we're here to remind you all that part 2 of the Robert Wone murder case is out now on Beers with Queers. You can find the rest of this story wherever you get your podcasts.
Now, we know we left you all hanging big time last week, so pause and go finish that case off if you haven't yet. But if you're all caught up, here's your next episode of Crime Over Wine. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 38th episode of Crime Over Wine, the only podcast with head-scratching true crime stories that are just better over a bottle of wine. I'm your host, Liam Collins, and this week, my guest co-host is a California girlie transplanted right here to Chattanooga, and, girl, she's a whole entire fiance. My guest co-host this week is Cornelia Nicholson. Hello, Cornelia.
Hi, Liam. Yes, I am now a fiance. Thank you for the wonderful intro.
Yes. So for those of you who don't live on the internet, Cornelia and her and her fiance's Riley's engagement blew the heck up. Literally
out
at
of nowhere.
Less than a week out of nowhere. Literally less than a week from when we're talking right now. So she's not only a fiance, but she's a hashtag famous fiance too. So it is the sweetest thing. So go look it up. Go look up on all of Cornelia's social media posts because it is such a cute little moment that you guys had. I'm so happy for you guys.
Thank you, Liam. Thank you.
Of course. So let's celebrate with some wine. Why don't we? I'm so excited for this. So this week we are drinking Caposaldo's. I hope I'm saying that right. Pinot Grigio. It's an Italian white, a refreshing and versatile white wine with the taste of the Italian hills in every glass. It has aromas of apple and pear and a clean, crisp palate and a mineral finish. Mineral finish. That's I'm feeling smooth, you just pour it right down kind of vibe.
I just opened it. It smells really good.
Yeah, let's see. So I've been letting mine breathe for a little bit. I usually don't, but I decided this week was the week that I was going to let it breathe.
We were going to do that? Okay.
Because I was I just don't want to wait one single extra second because I had a long day at work, so.
Yeah, no, okay. I just took mine out the fridge, so it's chilled. Ooh.
Appley.
That's really good.
Appley, perry, yeah. And also clean, crisp palate, mineral finish. That's it, yeah.
And not too of a harsh, strong. I know some wines are extremely bitter. But this isn't bitter, and it's not extremely sweet either.
So it's funny because you and Jeremiah Beatty, who was on episode 34 of this podcast, are the only two people who I know who describe any wine as bitter. Just for the record, and I've pieced this all together over time. When they say bitter, they do mean a dry wine. They mean a very dry wine. So if that tells you anything about where Cornelia's palate is, I suppose she's right up there with Jeremiah. I suppose.
Yeah, which I did talk to Jeremiah about the wine too, and she was telling me about her wine from the last episode. Yes. So yes, we're very much on the same page.
Y'all are on the same page for sure. No, but I like this one. I do think, again, I hear what you're saying about it not being very, it's fruity and that kind of stuff, but it's not sweet like you would think as a fruity kind of wine. It's very subtle kind of flavors, and so if you still this is a dry fruity wine for sure, which is again feels kind of antithetical to say, but if that's what you're interested in, here we are.
Yeah, it's very middle of the road. I would say it's not going to be a strong red type of wine, and it's not going to be a very fruity, fruit forward wine. It's very much, it's like a Pinot Grigio.
Yeah, it's like a Pinot Grigio. Hey, you know what? It's almost like it is a Pinot Grigio. All right, well, Cornelia, I have so much to talk about for this. So this case is crazy. It's a ride, and I want to just dive right into this. So are you ready for this?
Let's do it. I have no idea what we're going to talk about, and I'm excited to hear about it.
Awesome. So Cornelia, this week I want to tell you about an unsolved case that's almost 100 years old. I'm about to tell you so much detail about this case, but I'm going to put out a trigger warning for everyone who listens, waiting for the resolution to the very, very end. There is none here. But I promise you, you are still going to want to hear all about this, every single detail. So this week, I want to tell you all about Stephen Melkey and the Blindfolded car crash. It was a snowy early morning in St. Joseph County, Indiana, right around South Bend. William Joyce was driving around 3 in the morning on December 22nd, 1939, on a highway between South Bend and Mishawaka, Indiana. The snow was heavy, that real thick December snow in the Midwest. It was dark. William could really see only just a few feet ahead of him. He was driving really carefully, though, right? Like all Midwesterners do in December. William was certainly used to being in this kind of position, but before he knew it, wham, he hit what he knows right away was a person. Right away, William knows this guy must be in bad shape. It was a really rough crash. He stops the car and gets out to render aid to him. He runs to the man unconscious on the side of the highway about 40 feet from where he was hit by William's car.
That's insane. I would be so scared if I hit someone in the middle of snow. And then to get out of the car and have to check on this person.
Yeah.
I don't know what he could have been thinking. How, like.
Yeah, no, danger stitch.
Yeah. You don't get out.
Yeah, right, true. Well, like, also, like, you know, growing up in New York, right, like, I know this kind of snow. Like, I know, like, you know, when it's simply just, like you're seeing just as far as the headlights will take you, and it's not that far. So, like, this is, like, a real, like, I can, like, feel, like, what this is like. Yeah. Like, not that you would, California girl, but, like, you know, so point being is, like, I can, like
imagine
getting the environment here. Yeah, right. Like, I'm feeling very tense, like, you know, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, like, where did that come from? Like, this is
like just because you can't see anything, and so at the last second it's like there's a person and you don't have enough time to stop.
It all happens so fast.
Yeah. Right. That's terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, William, you know, quickly realizes that there's a lot of weird things going on here, and we're going to come back to that a little bit later on, so hold that for a second. But he realizes that this guy is in way worse shape than he could ever be any sort of help at all for him. So he gets back into his car, drives to a telephone, and calls 911 again, way before, you know, cell phones or anything.
Wow.
And actually, I think even before 911, he's just calling like the nearest police
help
department. Yeah, exactly. So when police arrive around 3:30, they see a truly bizarre scene. Again, like what I was just describing to you. Yes, what is clearly the scene of a car crash, but it looks like so much more than just that. This guy looks bad. He's drifting in and out of consciousness and clearly has several broken bones, but the truly strange thing has nothing to do with his injuries at all. This guy is missing a shoe, has his hands tied behind his back and rope around one of his ankles, the one that does still have his shoe on his foot. Along with all of that, the guy has tape around his eyes and his mouth, and when they take the tape off, they notice something else lodged in his mouth. It's a handkerchief with red lipstick on it.
Where did this guy come from? Because what was he? It sounds like he had been kidnapped and like held in a basement, tied up somewhere, tortured. But then the red lipstick makes me think, was it a woman? You know, that like it could be like some weird kinky thing that they were like role playing that went wrong.
Yeah, true.
You know? So
yeah, maybe.
That's crazy. If I hit someone and I saw that, I would not know what to
right.
do. Like,
Right. Well, so somehow, and again, this is like during the times of handkerchiefs, so like I don't know how they're able to figure this out, but like maybe they're clearly much more familiar with them than I am right now. But they were able to determine that the handkerchief was a man's handkerchief, interestingly enough. But again, but still red lipstick, so like you imagine that like, you know, male woman, you know, mingling, I suppose.
It just makes it more interesting to find out that it's a man's handkerchief with a woman's red lipstick on it. Like, what happened?
Yeah. And it's like the handkerchief belonged to this dude. Does it belong to somebody else? Which, like, there's no like handkerchief registry, right? So like you're never gonna be able to figure that out. But it's just like that's where like all of my questions start swirling at this point. Yeah, because like to your point though, like regardless of you know the like the context here, right?
Yeah.
Like clearly something was going on, and then he was just dropped off like literally in the middle of nowhere on the side of this highway, right? Or like somehow ended up here. So
and it's just William's luck that he just happened to be driving when this man is in the middle of the road. I would have like, why me?
Right.
Well, of all the drivers, why me?
Right. Yeah. No, not a bad thought at all. So, you know, police take the man to the hospital where he is treated for multiple broken bones, including in his neck, some internal bleeding and hemorrhaging, and severe trauma to his chest, legs. But the efforts are no good. He dies shortly after he arrived to the hospital.
That's crazy because now I feel like all the information of like what happened to him and how he got into the shape is now gone because he passed away. So how are we going to find out?
Yeah, well, he's like surely the only person, right, that like really knows what
happened,
going on and like would be truthful about it, right? Yeah, well, you know, to be clear though, William is not arrested. Police decide pretty early on that this was truly just an accident. But his injuries make it really difficult, like you're just talking about kind of there, Cornelia, to determine how they were inflicted. Sure, the injuries are like totally consistent with a high-speed collision, but because of that collision, they can't tell if there were any injuries inflicted on this guy before this crash. And that's problematic, clearly, because, you know, this guy was going through something before he was hit by a car and died. And without a clear scope of his injuries, it's really difficult to see what exactly happened to this man.
Yeah, because I wonder, how fast was William going? Because if you say he's a very cautious driver, and as you know, you've driven in the snow in New York and I've driven in Montana, you're not going very fast because you don't want to die yourself by skidding off the road or sliding on ice. So I'm like, it's probably for sure that not all of his injuries were from this car accident. That, like, I'm sure he has some, but I feel like majority are from whatever happened.
Yeah, and two, to be clear, like, this is like you know, again, 1930s, right? So, like, the technology is not super advanced. I wonder if today they would be able to pinpoint that a little bit more precisely about, like, okay, like, you know, we were able to figure out that he was more than likely hit on this side, and yet he has, like, injuries on this side, right? So, so it's kind of like, you know,
technology.
Lack of benefit of technology, I suppose. Yeah, right. So it's just kind of unfortunate, I guess, that
the situation that
later. Yeah, I mean, that feels weird to say, but, like, we'd probably know a lot more if it did.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so, Liam, who even is this guy, though? Do we know who he was?
Well, really good question, Cornelia. So police are able to identify this guy, actually. He is 44-year-old Stephen Melkey, a widowed rubber worker and father of 3, originally from Hungary. And so now police have to track down Stephen's family, his 3 kids aged 18, 14, and 8, to tell them that their other parent had also just died very suddenly.
And that's super tragic, since they already lost their mom, and to now know your dad passed away. But not only that he passed away, that there was a weird circumstances, that he was tied up, blindfolded, mouth stuffed with a handkerchief. That's going to be really hard for his kids to hear.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to know, you know, how did they take it, what they say.
Yeah, well, and they're like super young too, right? Like, man, but you know, when police do end up finding Stephen's kids, they tell investigators that they didn't even know that their dad had left the house. That's all happened in the middle of the night. They say that the night before, their dad had been studying a home correspondence source in the hopes of becoming a foreman at his manufacturing company. They said that, you know, they believe he went to bed around 11 the night before. And again, the only time that they knew that Stephen had even left the home was when police showed up at their house and woke them up to tell them that he had been hit by a car and died at the hospital.
That is so strange. They didn't even know their dad left the house. I have to pour more wine because this is getting really good now.
Yeah, it's getting juicy.
I need a refill.
Right, and like true, like again, like good point there. And like I guess I'm wondering, like, first thought is like, okay, how much detail did they tell them? Because like in reality, like the only thing that they need to know, right, is like he got hit by a car and died. Like I'm sure that they said, you know, we're looking into
the circumstances.
Yeah, like there's some weird things going on, but like, they don't need to know, right? That like
the nitty-gritty details, especially one of them is 8 years old. I could not imagine already losing my mom at whoever knows what age the child was, but then to lose your dad at 8, on top of the weird circumstances around what happened to him. I'm assuming they probably didn't tell the child, you know, how we found their dad, but
yeah, I hope not.
That's insane.
Yeah, really insane. Well, police ended up searching Stephen's home for any kind of evidence, but they don't find much. When they arrived, the front door was shut normally, you know, as they would expect it to, and there was no sign of a struggle or forced entry. So police decide that the evidence that was going to piece together this whole case was going to be at the scene of the crash.
Hello, Crime Over Wine listeners. I am Rachel.
And I'm Heather.
We are the hosts of Like Mother, Like Murder.
We bring you the good, the badass, and the crime.
Each week, we bring you stories from missing and murdered
to survivors and women who empower you.
And of course, some mom talk sprinkled in.
Check us out wherever you get your podcasts at Like Mother, Like Murder.
And give us a follow on social media so that we can say hi.
Okay, love you, bye.
Okay, love you, bye.
All right, Miss Nagel,
soon to
be married name. Tell me all about how are you liking your wine? How's everything going?
Like I said at the beginning, it's so good. It's so smooth. I was gonna say I thought I was halfway, but I'm about to be close because it's so good. And usually there's only there's certain wines that you can kind of drink fast like that, where like this is so good, I want more. Or there are some that are like this is really strong, you gotta sip it. This is like in between. Like I said earlier, this is very in between. Yes, very good. I can sip it without having to I want to chug it, but it's not like too strong where don't get a mouthful. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I feel like because normally with whites, it's my social wine, right? Like I want to be able to be having the girls over, be doing a little chit chat night. This I'm feeling very much so opposite. I feel like I could really enjoy this with a night in, with some housewives in the TV, with
bowl
some
of popcorn,
music playing, with my favorite podcast, that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So I'm I feel I'm getting very relaxed from this, which I am very much.
Very a cute night in. Lights low, dim the lights. If you have a fireplace, turn the fireplace on. You know what I mean? Walk around in a robe if you have one. Just very...
Girl, can we cut this podcast short? You're giving me all sorts of ideas. I'm ready.
It's the wine. It's the wine.
It is the wine. It is the wine for sure. Well, on that note, let's move on to the rest of this case. That way we can get to that. So, because I'm ready for it. So, back to Stephen. So, back at the scene of this accident, investigators are looking around to find anything that could paint the picture of what happened leading up to Stephen's death. And what they find actually helps a lot. They find a set of footprints made in the snow leading from the highway back to the woods. Now, somehow police are able to figure out that this trail was made by someone wearing only one shoe, which police say was likely Stephen. The trail led to a spot about 140 feet away from where Stephen was hit, where it looked like he had been sitting down or lying down. So this led investigators to believe that he was able to free one of his legs from the ropes in this spot that were binding his ankle, but he was only able to do that by taking off one of his shoes. But that wasn't all in the area. That's not all they find. In the snow, police also find the tracks near where they believe Stephen was able to free his ankles. Investigators believe that this spot was where whoever was driving that car dropped him off in the woods after kidnapping him. Through the tracks, they believe that they dropped Stephen off, backed up, and drove away.
That was a lot. Yeah. Wow. Okay, so first off, he was dropped off in the snow and had to take his shoe off to unbind himself and then walked towards the highway. And then that's where obviously he got hit by William.
Right.
That is insane. And so I just want to know why they just dropped him off and left him. We're like, bye. Yeah. Pretty much.
Right. And who knows why, right? And I have a couple of different theories about why. So maybe hold that thought a little bit because I'd love to hear where your thoughts are on that. Well, interestingly though, that's not all, Cornelia. So I see you're taking another sip of wine because I think you're going to need that. So near Stephen's trail that led to this highway where he eventually lost his life is another set of footprints that are practically parallel to Stephen's.
Okay, so somebody was walking with him.
Right.
Okay, so what does this mean?
Well, when investigators see this, they believe, like you're believing here, Cornelia, that there was likely someone following Stephen the night he was killed by the car. They think that it's likely that someone was trying to make sure that he walked right out into the highway and possibly even pushed him in front of William's car that night.
Wow, okay. That's a turn of events. That's new information.
You know, there is a lot of conflicting reporting on this, though. It's also possible that this was like a total coincidence. Basically, I saw some reporting, and again, conflicting reporting, that suggested that this second set of footprints was too packed to have been made at the same time as Stephen's. Like, I guess they were like a different consistency, meaning that it's possible that no one actually followed Stephen that night, and that he was actually just kidnapped, dumped in the woods, possibly with the intention of having him freeze to death in the Midwestern December winter. Then Stephen freed his ankles, but was unable to free his hands, and therefore unable to remove the tape from his eyes and from his mouth. Stephen then stumbled his way out of the woods and walked toward the highway and eventually got hit and killed by a car.
Okay, that does make a lot of sense, because if you can't see, you know, where you're walking and you're just walking blindly,
Sure.
You don't know you're walking in front of a car.
Sure, but I do have two thoughts there. Like, one, you can still hear the car, and so I don't really fully understand how that happens, I guess. But, like, I don't know. Maybe it's snowing, so, like, I'm sure it's quieter, but and, like, maybe you hear it kind of, but, like, don't know what's coming right
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Maybe he didn't know how close he was to the car, or that the car, that he was standing, you know, on the highway. Because maybe he thought, okay, I hear the highway, but I'm not on the highway.
And like maybe even like to that point too, like good point there, because maybe even like intentionally walking toward the highway to like try to get help, and like didn't realize that nobody could see him, and like didn't know he was standing in the middle of the road,
because maybe obviously he's blindfolded, so he doesn't see how maybe thick the snow is, or the mist, or whatever, you know what happens when it snows. So he doesn't know that people aren't going to be able to see you clearly because of how you know, foggy it is outside, and then got hit by a car.
Right. And I also have some thoughts about this, like, second set of footprints, too, because I, like, the more I thought about it, I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me, and here's why. Because so first off, like, if they truly did lead this person out to the you know, highway, like, where do they go from there, right? Like, where are the footprints, like, running away from the scene? Like, why didn't William see this other person? And second of all, like, why dump them so far away, too, and then follow them? Like, why not just, like, I don't know. It just doesn't feel right to me.
And do the footprints just stop from there? Because they're saying, like, if you know?
I never saw anything that, like, suggested where they went from there. Unless they, like, walked them back, I guess. Like, you know, but, like, still, like, the way I see all that playing out, right, is, like, so, like, it's like Stephen gets hit by a car. William jumps out to help them. And then, like, you're, like, carefully tracing your steps back to, like, make sure that, like, there are no
other sets.
Yeah, right. Like, I don't know. Unless it's, like, that dark, which it is, like, Indiana. December 1930s.
Could be.
Like, maybe it's that dark. But I don't know, man. I'm not feeling that.
Yeah, I'm like, and so when they mean by packed, like the snow so packed in, because when I heard that, I'm like, is it that this person maybe came first, like decided, okay, this is how we're gonna pull the car up, you know, potentially lead him this way, and then like they mapped it out first and then did it?
See, I truly don't think that the other set of footprints are related at all. I really don't. Because the way that I you know, am hearing this, right, is like packed with snow, right? So like the way, like, you know, because like if there are footprints and like more snow comes, like that's like that's how I see
that's what I'm thinking too.
Right? So like you can tell. Yeah, so, like, I don't know. I just...
Like, these may just have been old footprints from someone else who just happened to be walking...
Maybe.
...in that wooded area at time.
I think so. I think that, like, that's the only thing that makes any sort of sense to me, honestly.
Because if they were made the same time... If there was someone walking with him, then they would look the same amount. But it sounds like these are an older set of prints.
Right.
And it just so happens...
Right, they would look the same.
It just so happens that they're where he was walking to.
Yeah. And like too, like, so there's like this, like the way that it's been described is like that he was like dropped off and or like walked through like this culvert area, and like the tracks were like next to the culvert.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna need you to explain what a culvert is for me.
oh, it's like a little divot thing. It's like let me, like, I'll show you a picture. Hold on.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Yeah. Just like a little, like, I don't know, I want to say like divot or whatever, but a little channel underneath the bridge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like think like, again, for people, if you can't look it up right now, a drain kind of thing, like a sewer system. You've seen them a bajillion and a half times, I'm sure. But it basically, it's like you see them a lot, like on the sides of roads, right? So like makes sense what we're talking about here. Well, all of that obviously begs a really obvious question, right, Cornelia? Who would have possibly done this? Get ready for that big test with Study.com. Study.com offers learning materials and test prep, even LSAT study prep guides for all of my legal nerds listening. Unfortunately, there aren't any wine study guides, and believe me, I did check. Listeners can get 30% off their first 3 months of any subscription level using the promo code CrimeOverWine. Again, that's promo code CrimeOverWine, no spaces, for 30% off your first 3 months at Study.com. Learn faster, stay motivated, study smarter with our sponsor, Study.com. Just a little while after Stephen's death, police detain and question 3 different people in connection to this whole incident. The first 2 are 27-year-old Birdie DeVos and 28-year-old Alan Polomsky. They are engaged together. Birdie is a waitress at the local tavern, and Alan is a coal driver. Now, Birdie and Alan have both known Stephen for a while. Stephen was a frequent customer at the tavern, and over time, he and Birdie had developed a pretty close friendship. I never saw if they ever got like intimate or romantic necessarily, but it's kind of implied in this case because Alan really did not like Stephen's relationship with Birdie at all. They had apparently gotten into multiple fistfights and verbal altercations together over Birdie's attention, and Alan and Stephen were seen fighting right before Stephen died.
Okay, well, that gives me a lot of clues as to maybe what happened, because I feel like we can typically, I don't know, off of that information, we can kind of, all right, they were fighting, fist fighting. Obviously, everybody wanted Birdie's attention. Alan didn't like it because that's his woman. And here comes Stephen, you know, just some customer smoozing up to his woman. And he's like, what are you doing? And maybe the fist fight got taken too far one day. But, okay, now that leads me back to the lipstick. Man's handkerchief and lipstick. So, I don't know. Sips wine. Gotta sip my wine.
True. But no, really good point though, Cornelia, because that's again, like when I first saw the handkerchief, male handkerchief, red lipstick, obviously what we were talking about, you know, I thought of, you know, like, you know, Bonnie and Clyde type situation, right? Like I saw like, you know, the like relationship together, like conspired together, killed the dude. So these 2 are looking pretty good to me, you know, in my personal opinion.
Really suspicious at this point.
Yeah, real suspicious. Well, unfortunately, though, for us, maybe anyways, then, you know, maybe not for them. But Birdie and Alan give an alibi to police, and in my opinion, it's like a really bad one, but like, okay. Birdie and Alan both said that they were at the tavern all night. After they left, Birdie said that Alan dropped her off around 3:30 in the morning, and then Alan went home himself. Police bring them in and give them both a lie detector test, and they both passed, and they were both released without being given any charges.
So it's kind of suspicious because they're both their own alibi. They're both each other's alibi. So, of course, that's going to work out for them because, oh, yeah, Alan's my alibi. Oh, yeah, Birdie's my alibi. But maybe they could have been together.
Well, like worst alibi in the world, and let me tell you why. Because, like, again, if you remember, like, this all happened at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? And, like, they openly admitted to being like out in the world, right? At like around that time, like, because they both said that they went home at 3:30 in the morning. And like you said, like, yeah, like if they were in this together, like they like you're just gonna like put them under a lie detector test and be like yeah, like, you know, we're okay, like that. And just
3:30 a.m. is a late time to be getting home.
That's what I'm saying,
and not be suspicious. So it's weird that cops were like, good to go. No issues here. But you said there was a third person.
Well, right. There is, Cornelia. His name is George Smith, and he worked with Stephen at the rubber plant, and he had also been known to have had a close relationship with Birdie, and was also seen multiple times fighting with Stephen over Birdie's attention, too. Police in Mishawaka, India, which was the original agency William called after he hit Stephen with his car, had apparently been made aware previously of Stephen's run-ins with Alan and George over his interactions with Birdie, and according to archive reporting in the South Bend Tribune, that was the reason that they had started looking at all 3 of them to begin with.
Birdie must be a looker, because she has all these men like coming after her. She's got all this attention, and who knows, there could be like 10 other men, all of her other customers that are like after her too. But wow, Stephen is just fighting with everyone over Birdie.
Yeah.
This is insane.
And she is very pretty. She is very pretty. I don't know if she's worth killing over.
Yeah, I think that's a little excessive.
Right.
But I'm sure she was gorgeous because she has to be if all these men are literally fist fighting each other for her and potentially committing murder. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I never saw anything about an alibi from George, but he was also brought in for a lie detector test, and he also passed and was also released without charges. Ultimately, despite these obvious motivations and obvious opportunities to kill Stephen, investigators never charged any of them with anything related to Stephen's kidnapping or his death. Police even said that they were able to compare everyone's tires to the tracks found in the woods, and they said that they were not a match, which supported their decision not to charge them.
I don't know. I need a new police department to investigate this because I don't like this. It doesn't seem. I feel like there's multiple suspects who seem very likely to have done this, and that maybe just a little more digging could have uncovered something because they all seem so guilty. Even I don't know why, but even Bertie, because what were you guys doing out at 3 a.m. the day that he was murdered? And they were fighting that day. So it's just fishy.
Yeah. No, really fishy. And yeah, and like I'm imagining again, I see a lot of, I know a lot of bartenders, not to brag, but I do. And so I know that they those type, that type of person, right, is normally out at, 3 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday. Okay, sure. That makes sense. That's their lifestyle. So I don't really that doesn't really click anything for me, but what does click for me is this time line up of
events,
again, time, opportunity, events, motive, all these things that clicks for me 1,000%.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's just raising a lot of red flags in my mind.
No, big time.
That apparently didn't raise flags in the police department at the time.
Right. Well, and to be fair, it did raise the red flags, right? But it just didn't pan out, I guess, in terms of charges, because again, this is bogus in my personal opinion, but they lined up the tires and you're just oh, not a match. What is that? First of all, what does that look like?
Yeah.
Second of all, this is 1930s. I'm sure that the tires weren't all that crazy back then. Maybe they were, but I don't know that much about tires, but I just kind of picture, there's only 2 or 3, tire manufacturers in town. So I don't get that much, but again, they said it was enough to clear them, but on the other side of the coin too, who's to say that they didn't just borrow someone's car? That does not in and of itself just clear someone's name. I don't really understand.
Because I'm sure that they have other friends and know other people that they can say, hey, can I borrow your car? There was multiple ways that they could have went about this, that just matching up the tire threads of their current cars isn't enough.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, that is pretty much where things stand, Cornelia, to this day. Really unsatisfying ending, but that's where we are. There are still no charges related to Stephen Melkey's death. And as for Stephen's children, though, Frederick, the youngest of Stephen's children, was sent to an orphanage until he was adopted 7 years later.
That's horrible.
Both of Stephen's older 2 children, Leonard and Robert, joined the military. Leonard, the middle child, died in 1943 while serving in World War II, but his remains were lost at sea.
Wow.
Robert, the oldest child, died in 2004 at the age of 83.
Well, that's good for Robert, but it's so horrible for what his kids have to go through and still have no justice as to what happened to their dad. They still, well, obviously this was many, many years ago, but at the time they had no idea what happened and they had to live with that. And for the youngest son to have to be in an orphanage, that is horrible. That's a horrible ending for them.
Yeah, and this is re-traumatizing so many times, right? I mean, because again, you lose your mother at a young age, you lose your dad in this super crazy weird way, right? Leonard dies in this super horrible, way to go, right? I mean, and Frederick is just sitting in an orphanage for 7 years.
Yeah, it's tough.
Oh man.
And I wonder. I was gonna say I wonder why his 18-year-old brother, couldn't adopt him, but then I realized, they both joined the military and went overseas, so they weren't around to adopt him and take care of him. Yeah, it's just a really sad situation overall, and that they're they don't have their dad and they have no idea what happened to him. I want to know what happened to him.
I know. Yeah, no, same. It's eating me up alive. I can't imagine what it's doing for them. But, you know, even though there is no one around anymore to be pushing police to find the truth on this, and realistically, probably no one's still alive today who could even be charged with any crimes related to what happened to Stephen, I think Stephen, above anybody else, deserves the world to know what really happened to him that bizarre December morning. So if you know anything about the death of Stephen Melkey, call the South Bend Police Department at 574-235-9201, and we're also going to put that number on our website and in our show notes as always.
Yes, please call, because I think you're right, Liam. Like, he deserves the world knowing what happened to him, because that's such a tragic way to go. And it sounded like he was a good man. He was just a worker at the rubber plant, like you said, taking care of 3 young boys, a widow. So he had his own. That's a lot. And it sounds like, I know, you know, we don't know him personally, his whole personality and things like that, but I think it's tragic for anyone to go that way and no justice be done in the end.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, that's like the hardest part of doing these stories, right? Is, you know, they're so important, but it's like, so, you know, again, like, you know, just like, it feels like that itch you can't scratch at the end of this thing, right? I mean, it's just, it's like, where do we even go from here? But like, at the same time too, like, with that being said, like, that's one of the reasons why I started this podcast, right? Because I think that, you know, there are so many stories, and like, sure, you know, I've heard so many times over and over and over and over and over again from people saying, you know, stop doing the unsolved cases. Like, we want, like, you know, cases that are solved so that we can have, like, you know,
a resolution,
like, you know, finality. Yeah. And like, sure, like, I get it. Like, I get that, you know, that desire, and like, those cases are absolutely still important. But these cases are just as, if not more important, because there are, you know, real people out there who need to have this loop closed, and we need to, you know, be spreading the word about that. And so instead of just, you know, using true crime as a way to, you know, entertain ourselves, you know, drinking glasses of wine at the end of the day, like, we really need to be able to, you know, do something more with these stories. And, you know, if we're going to be, you know, spending all of our time listening to true crime, like, we might as well, you know, be able to you know, to try to do some good at the end of this whole thing. And so that's my goal. I hope that's everyone's, you know, who's listening to this. I hope that's all of your goal. So that's my little soapbox.
I love it. I think that's a very good point. I think especially with a lot of unsolved cases, because maybe there could be a listener out there who may have a relative who was there at the time, who, you know, may know someone that knows someone that knows someone, and that, you know, that could help solve something. So I think, like you said, hearing the solved cases are great, but I think like cold cases and unsolved cases, because we've seen that happen many a times where a cold case is closed and they reopen it and they're like, actually, we figured out with this new technology what to do. So keeping this story alive and telling it, it may put, I don't want to say pressure, but, you know, just nudge the police department, like, you know what, things have changed. It's been a couple of years now. Our technology is different. Let's take a look at some of, you know, the evidence that we have and see if we can solve this with what we have. Because who knows, maybe now with evidence, the tire tracks will match or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, with
somebody. And who knows?
Yeah. And that's a great point, because like again, like, and not to get on like this whole like tangent soapbox type thing, but it is important because like with like all it takes is it only takes one call. It only takes one person, period, right? It could take that one caller who, again, like you said, you know, just saw that one weird thing back in the day and they just didn't sit right with them, and like now, like, you didn't even know that there was a crime committed, and so now that this is something, and I've heard about it all the time, right? Of just like, you know, you're sitting at home and you're just like, you know, this doesn't feel like crazy important, but like might as well. But like that could be the key that they've been waiting for, and just nobody knew it, right? Because it felt so insignificant. And then also too, like from a police perspective too, right? Like, you know, like podcasters like me, like, sure, everyone like rolls their eyes about true crime podcasters, but you know, if it you know brings it back to the top of the list for investigators, you know, all it takes is that one investigator to look at this case from a different perspective, right? Of just like giving a thought that nobody considered before, just because nobody considered it before. And yet this guy could just like, you know, send it down a whole new avenue, or girl, to investigate this thing. So
you never know.
Yeah, you never know. And so anyways, that's just like my little true crime soapbox, because I think that, you know, I really think that it's important to be able to elevate these stories, because police just can't do it on their own. They need help. So
1,000% agree.
Well, that is like my little soapbox for that, Cornelia. So I'm just going to pause there and say thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. The wine was so good. I think I have something I'm going to add to my collection now. So please text me where you got this from. But this was really fun. I loved hearing about, well, I don't want to say loved, but I did enjoy hearing about his story. And I really do hope that eventually there could be a resolution and, some resolve for his family and relatives, whether they're here living or past.
Same. I feel that for sure. Well, tell everyone where they can find you and your work and all of your amazing fiance engagement content.
If you want to follow our wedding planning, you can find me on Instagram at Cornelia Nicholson TV and on Facebook at, I think it's still Cornelia Nicholson TV. Yes, you can find me there. And TikTok, C. Ray Nicholson. On TikTok, yeah.
Well, thank you again so much for coming on, and thank you all so much for listening. We are going to put all of our sources on our website so you can read everything for yourself and probably come up with a few theories too. And if you are just loving this podcast and are just looking for a way to tell everyone and anyone about it, the best way to help people discover this podcast is by leaving us a 5-star rating and a review wherever you are listening right now. So make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you're wondering what we have in store for you next week, here's a quick sneak peek. Hello, everybody. It's Liam.
And I'm Marissa Stacy. I'm joining the Crime Vineyard next week to tell you all about a wild case that took place at dozens of fast food restaurants across the country. What happens when an unknown caller tells you to do the unthinkable?
We will answer that question for you all next Wine Wednesday on another episode of Crime Over Wine.
Proud member of the Podnuga Network.